Well, I don't know if you're an amener or not, but I'll give you a chance to say amen. How many of you are glad that you're saved today and you're not in jail? Amen. I knew I'd get something out of you today. All right, Proverbs chapter number 8. What a blessing it is to be saved, to have the Lord go with you every step of the way. Preacher, about 9:15, is that when I'm supposed to be done? What's that? 9:20? All right. Wow. I got 5 extra minutes. Whew. Man, that's wonderful. You know, you ever, Pastor Kevin, I'm sure you've had this. Where's Pastor Weiss? You were here just a minute ago. He went to check on the football scores. Wait, nobody's playing football anymore, so he's not doing that. All right. Is he in here? Where are you at, brother? Oh, there you are. Okay, good. You guys, you ever had somebody come to you and say, Pastor, how do I get God's blessing in my life? Ever had that? And I have. So many times. People say, how do I get my children to live for God? Questions, how do I get my children to marry right? How do I keep the chaos and the drama out of my house, out of my home? People ask this stuff. I don't know about you, but those were things that were really important to me when I had these little kids land in my house. I just never wanted to have a house where there was a bunch of screaming and yelling going on and chaos. We had a young man. We had several kids through the years that stayed in our home for extended periods of time. We had a young man stay in our house his junior and senior year of high school. His father committed suicide, and his mother was living with another man, and there was a lot of chaos there. And he got saved, and then he really got right with the Lord at church camp, and he wanted to go to our Christian school, and so we made it possible a way for him to come to our school. And so he lived with me and my wife and our family for about 2 years. He's married to a young lady now, has 3 kids of his own, lives in Missouri, and got a Christian home. It's a blessing. But I came into the house one day, and he was sitting on the couch. And he said, he didn't say anything. He was just sitting there, and it was just kind of strange. I sat down, and I was sitting in my chair, and I was reading a book or a paper or something, and a good 5 or 10 minutes went by, and he wasn't playing a game. He wasn't looking at a phone. He wasn't reading a book. He was just staring at the wall. After a while, it was awkward, you know what I mean? I thought it was a little strange. And I said, "You all right, David? Everything good?" And he started crying. He said, "Pastor, I just want to thank you." And I said, "David," "we love you, and you're more than welcome in your house and in our house." And he said, "Well," he said, "I have something particular I wanted to thank you for." He said, "I really do appreciate staying in your house," but he said, "I've never experienced this before." And I said, "What?" He said, "I've never sat in a house and it was peaceful." He said, "At my house, either my brother or my sister or my mother, somebody's blasting trashy music. Somebody's yelling at somebody, something chaotic going on." He said, "I've just never sat on a couch in my house with other people home and it'd be peaceful." I thought to myself, how sad is that? But then I said, how grateful I was that God had given me that in my house. Praise the Lord. Now, the kids were all gone. There was no one there but me, so it was very peaceful. No, I'm just kidding. It was a peaceful home. Take your Bible, go to Proverbs chapter number 8. And I want to say one little statement, and then I'm going to get into what I'm going to talk about you today. Your Pastor Skeving asked me to come here, and I know that it's kind of impossible for me to do like a big, long book study and a word for word, go through a whole bunch of stuff like that. I know that you're getting all kinds of good teaching and preaching here in your church and at the college and in all the classes and things that go on here. And I kind of view my opportunity to come here to drive some truths into your heart and just kind of put a stake in them so they stay there hopefully for a while. And maybe God can just use me in that way to get just some simple, basic concepts into your head and into your heart that'll stick with you for a while. By God's grace, I'm going to try this morning to get something into your heart that will stick with you. I believe in my heart that if you get this a little truth down, it'll ride with you for years and years to come. And it'll help you in multiple ways. Life is a series of choices, decisions, and then the consequences, the results of those decisions. What I'm going to share with you today, I think by God's grace can help you with those. You can raise children for God today. It's possible. You can do it. You can have a happy home. You can have a happy marriage. You can have God's blessing in your life. But there are no shortcuts to it. You can't do it your way. You know, I did it my way. That's the theory, that's the philosophy of the average person today, right? Well, you kind of got to give that up when you become a Christian. And as you grow in the Lord, you can't do it my way anymore. You have to do it the Lord's way. Go to Proverbs chapter number 8, and let me read to you a few verses, and then I'll begin to show you some of these principles. You know, the Bible says in verse number 10, receive my instruction and not silver, and knowledge rather than choice gold. For wisdom is better than rubies, and all the things that may be desired are not to be compared to it. I, wisdom, dwell with prudence, and find out knowledge of witty inventions. The fear of the Lord is to hate evil, pride and arrogancy, and the evil way, and the forward mouth do I hate. Counsel is mine, and sound wisdom. I am understanding, I have strength. By me kings reign, and princes decree justice. By me princes rule, and nobles, even all the judges of the earth. I love them that love me, and those that seek me early shall find me. Riches and honor are with me. I love this verse. Pay attention. Yea, durable riches and righteousness. Durable stuff. Don't you like durable stuff? Remember when we were kids and everything that came from Japan broke the next afternoon? Remember that? I'm not against the Japanese, but it's just the way it was back then. Nowadays, we get a lot of cheap stuff from China. I like the way our president says. He always says, China. I don't know what that's about, but he never just says China. He was a China. We're having a tariff with China. You know, I don't know what that is. But anyway, durable riches. My fruit is better than gold, yea, than fine gold, and my revenues than choice silver. I lead in the way of righteousness, in the midst of the paths of judgment, that I may cause those that love me to inherit substance, and I will fill their treasuries. I want to just cause your mind to go with me to verse 21. I want to read it one more time, and then I'm just going to talk to you for a little bit. Verse 21. It's talking about wisdom. You know that. You've read Proverbs before. But grab that verse and think about it. Ponder on it. Meditate upon it. You know, the cow takes that grass down into its first stomach and gets a little acid in it and all that and the yummy stuff down in there, and then it brings it up, chews on it. You always drive by a field and see the cows, and they're all out there going. All day long they do that. You probably learned this in school, that they have 4 stomachs, and they keep bringing it up and chewing the cud and getting everything they can out of that blade of grass. That's how we're supposed to do it with the Word of God, by the way, is just keep chewing on it all day long. I want you to chew on that thought for just a little bit. Look at verse 21. That I may cause those that love me, love wisdom, to inherit substance, and I will fill their treasuries. Now look up here just for a second. I don't believe that it's a bad thing for you to have things on this earth of value. It's interesting in the Bible, Job was a rich man, Abraham was a rich man. It's not such a bad thing to, if you can be trusted with it, not a lot of people can, to invest it into the work of God. But I've discovered as I've gone through life that the things that value the most on this earth aren't gold and silver and all those treasuries. I was telling someone, I can't remember who it was, we were talking, and I was telling him about something that happened in my life a long time ago, many years ago. My wife, I was giving her a little break. We had 4 kids, and I think they were like, I don't know their age differences, but I'm going to say they were probably 6 years old and down. And my youngest was an infant, so I had her in the car seat, and I had grabbed a grocery cart. I put her in there, and I began to head up into the grocery store. And I had my other 3 with me. We had this rule that they were holding hands, so they would hold hands, and the other hand would be in their pocket. Some of you moms know exactly what I'm talking about. We also had this rule that if they ever asked more than one time for something, if they said, "Can I have this?" and I said no, or mom said no, and if they asked again, we had this pen where we would put a little mark on their hand, and they knew that when they got home, they were at least having one spanking. We just didn't put up with that stuff. And we didn't put up with the fits, no, you can't have that. I hate you. We didn't do that at our house. We didn't do that at home, so that when we were in public, we didn't have to. Mothers say this all the time. "Ma'am, if this is your line, I'm sorry for you. You need to do your homework." Here's what mothers do. Their kid's being a little brat. He's not obeying, and they go, "He didn't take his nap today." Famous line. Mothers use it. I don't care if he didn't take his nap. He's supposed to obey mommy. It's just a good, simple little thing. And I was walking into this store, and this old man, he was close to probably 90. He was just old, and he was using a cane, kind of like this old guy, and he took his cane, Brother Skeving, and he slapped it against my chest. Kind of shocked me. I was walking past him. He was coming out. I was going in. Bam, this cane's across my chest. And I looked over at him, and he said, "All 4 of those your kids?" And I said, "Yes, sir." I will never forget what he said to me next. He said, "You're a millionaire 4 times over, and don't you ever forget it, son." And he walked away. I looked down at those kids, and up to that point in my life, they were like, "No, okay, hey, quit that, stop that." All of a sudden, I looked at those kids and said, "Man, I have been increased with substance. My treasuries are full." On my phone, if you want to come and look after, if you want to come up and talk to me, on my phone is a picture of my wife and I sitting there holding our 8 grandkids. Man, I'm rich. The treasuries are full. It's wonderful. But a lot of people are trying to get to that all sorts of different ways. Oprah said this. Dr. Phil, he said this. Who cares? What does the Bible say? But we have a problem. Everyone in our country is trying to get to things quickly, trying to not really do it God's way, and as a result, the end product is not coming around the way that they wished it would. And it's sad. And the Bible says part of the job of us as pastors in Ezekiel chapter 44, it says, "And they shall teach my people the difference between the holy and the profane, and cause them to discern between the unclean and the clean." We're living in a day when, I don't know, what's right is wrong, what's wrong is right. Everybody's supposedly confused. I'm not confused yet to this day that everybody's really confused. Because I talk to people, and I'll say, "Now you know that's wrong, don't you?" And they go, "Well, yeah." If you get them alone and other people aren't around, you'll say, "Well, you know that's not right, don't you?" "Well, yeah." They'll admit it. See, according to Romans chapter 2, I believe it is in verse 15, God wrote his law in our hearts. We know what's right and what's wrong. We just do. But, we get educated perhaps by others, or we educate ourselves that it's not that bad, and we keep shifting things. Things keep shifting. I remember when I was a kid, things that were wrong, Christians are doing now, like nobody's business. I'll give you a quick one, and then I got to read you something, and then I'll apply the principle to it. Back when I was a kid, when I was a very young kid, I remember when I use a small C for this. You ever been hit with a soft rock, by the way? You've heard that before. But all of a sudden we had Christian rock. A guy by the name of Paul Simon. I'm not trying to gotcha moment here, but how many of you know who Simon and Garfunkel were? Any of you guys know that? Some of you are too young. You don't know what's going on. This is a rock group back in the 70s or so, in the 80s. Paul Simon was kind of the songwriter of that group. And Paul Simon wanted to know where rock music came from. So our government, through public broadcasting, hired him and others to produce a thing called the History of Rock and Roll. And he went all across the United States of America to study rock and roll, where it came from, all this different stuff. Guess he wanted to know the origin of it. Guess where he ended up? He ended up around some jungle fires in Africa with some heathen witch doctors. He brought them on stage with him in Johannesburg, South Africa, and he performed with them, and he told the crowd that he was so excited that he had found the origin and the rhythms of his music. And he said what excited him the most, by the way, he performed his music at the same time that the witch doctors performed a seance on the side of the stage with their rhythms, with his rhythms. He was so excited about it, and he said on the stage that he was so excited about it because he had discovered that his music was spiritual. That's what he said. Well, then we have Christian rock and roll. See how things get shifted? Music, see, is it a biblical principle that you ever saw in your Bible where God ever walks over to Satan and says, man, I am fresh out of material, man. We up in heaven, we've been having some board meetings, and we just can't come up with anything. Have you come up with anything that works lately? And Satan says, oh yeah, we came up with this thing called rock music. And the Lord says, yeah, there we go. We'll put Jesus into it and it'll work. You really think God does that? It's the other way around. Satan takes everything that's God's, perverts it. Perverts the Bible, perverts the church, perverts music, changes, what real Christianity is. I mean, it's never stopping. Thank God for a pastor, and of course now with Pastor Weiss, a church that just keeps going in the old time way. God has not changed. But we're seeing a lot of change, and I think the best way to illustrate that is to read something to you, okay? So you pay attention about this. 22 years ago, in Nashville, Tennessee, this is an article that I found, and it's really neat. 22 years ago in Nashville, Tennessee, during the first week of January 1996, more than 4,000 baseball coaches descended upon the Opryland Hotel for the 52nd Annual American Baseball Coach Association's convention. While I waited in line to register with the hotel staff, I heard other more veteran coaches rumbling about the lineup of speakers scheduled to present during the weekend. One name in particular kept resurfacing in conversations, always with the same sentiment. John Scalinas is here? Oh, man, worth every penny of my airfare. Who is John Scalinas? I thought to myself. Well, who cares? I was just happy to be there. But in 1996, the year that I was at this thing, Coach Scalinas was 78 years old and had been retired from college baseball coaching for 5 years. His career began in 1948. The old man shuffled to the stage to an impressive standing ovation. I looked across the way and saw him wearing dark polyester stretch pants, a light blue shirt, and a string around his neck from which hung an official-sized home plate. Seriously, I thought, who is this guy? He spoke for about 20 minutes, not once ever mentioning that prop hung around his neck. Eventually, Coach Scalinas appeared to notice the snickering among some of the coaches. You could tell that many thought that perhaps Coach had lost his mind and had forgotten what was around his neck. Finally, he said, "You're probably all wondering why I'm wearing home plate around my neck." We all laughed. He said, "I may be old, but I'm not crazy." The reason I stand before you today is to share with you, baseball people, what I've learned in my life from home plate. Several hands went up when Coach asked, how many Little League coaches are there in the crowd today? Many hands went up. He asked, do you know how wide home plate is in Little League baseball? It was silent for a bit. Someone finally offered in a questioning voice, 17 inches? Right, that's right, he said. Now, are there any Babe Ruth coaches in here today? Several hands went up. He said, how wide is home plate in Babe Ruth baseball? Someone in a questioning voice said, 17 inches? He said, correct, that's right. He said, now how many high school coaches do we have in the room today? Hundreds of hands shot up as the pattern began to appear. How wide is home plate in high school baseball? 17 inches, they said, sounding now a little bit more confident. You're right, the old coach bellowed. And you college coaches, how wide is home plate in college baseball? 17 inches, we said in unison. Any minor league coaches here? How wide is home plate in minor league baseball? 17 inches. Right, said the old coach. Now, how about the big leagues? How many major league coaches are there here today? Just a few hands went up. He said, how wide is home plate in Major League Pro Baseball? 17 inches, they said. 17 inches, bellowed the old coach in his gruff voice. And what do? With a big league pitcher who can't throw the ball over 17 inches. He paused. They send him to Pocatello, Idaho. Everyone laughed. He said what they don't do is they don't say, Jimmy, it's okay. If you can't hit a 17-inch home plate, we'll make it 18 inches or 19 inches or 20 inches. Whatever you need, Jimmy, we'll make it as wide as you need. He paused. Coaches, what do we do when our best player shows up late for practice? Or when our team forbids facial hair and our best player shows up unshaven? What if our best player or any player on the team gets caught drinking? Do we hold him accountable? Or do we change the rules to fit him? Do we just widen the plate? The chuckles in the room gradually began to fade as 4,000 coaches began to grow quiet. The fog began to lift as the old coach's message began to unfold. He turned the plate around to himself, took out a black Sharpie pen and drew something on it. When he turned it around towards the crowd, pointing up, a house was revealed, complete with a freshly drawn door and 2 windows. He said, coaches, this is the problem in our homes today. This is what's wrong with our marriages today, with the way we parent our kids, with the way we discipline. We don't teach accountability to our kids. There's no consequences for failing to meet the standards. We just widen the plate. He paused. Then to the point at the top of the house, he added a small American flag. He said, this is the problem in our schools today. The quality of our education is going downhill fast, and teachers have been stripped of the tools that is necessary to be successful, to educate and discipline our young children. We are allowing others all across the spectrum of our society to widen home plate. And where is it getting us? He replaced the flag with a cross. He said, this is the problem in our churches. Powerful people, instead of teaching us the Word of God and teaching us the things of God that are there clearly in the Word of God, are changing it and widening the plate, and we allow it. The same is true with our government. Our so-called representatives make rules for us that they don't apply to themselves. They take bribes from lobbyists in foreign countries. They no longer serve us, and we just allow them to keep widening the plate while we see our country falling into a dark abyss while we watch. I was amazed. I came to a baseball convention expecting to learn something about teaching young men how to throw curveballs and bunting and how to run better practices. But I'd learned something far more valuable. From an old man with home plate strung around his neck, I had learned something about life, about myself, about my own weaknesses, and about my responsibilities as a father, as a husband, and as a leader. I had to hold myself and others I was responsible for accountable to that which I knew to be right, lest our families, our faith, and our society continue down an undesirable path. Coach Scalinas concluded, if I'm lucky today, you will remember one thing from this old coach, and it's this. If we fail to hold ourselves to a higher standard, a standard of what we know to be right, if we fail to hold our spouses and our children to the same standards, if we are unwilling or unable to provide a consequence when they do not meet the standards, if our schools and churches and our government fail to hold themselves accountable to those they serve, there is but one thing to look forward to. And with that, the old coach turned home plate around to the backside, which was a dark black backside. He said, if we continue to widen the plate, we have nothing but dark, dark days ahead. Wow. I used that illustration, Pastor Skeving. In Reno, Nevada, there's a pastor there named Randy Ralston. Randy Ralston was a professional baseball player before he was a pastor. After the message, he came up to me. He was a pitcher. He came up to me and he said, man, I never knew home plate was 17 inches. He said, man, what a truth. Yeah, see, that's why you have problems in your life. That's why you're saying, how do I get God's blessing? Well, it's not working what you're doing because you keep widening the plate. You can't figure out why your home things aren't clicking because you keep widening the plate. You keep justifying why you didn't read your Bible, why you didn't spend time and pray. You keep widening the plate. You're not holding your own self accountable. I preached yesterday, first of all, to the fathers. Fathers, if you don't hold yourself accountable, the homes are never going to be what they should be. Daddy's got to start the thing. But we widen the plate. Well, you know. And we look over, I was going to say we look over at Brother Joe, but there's a Joe here, so I'm not going to use you. I use Aunt Plutie all the time because nobody has an Aunt Plutie. By the way, I said that at a church one time, and a lady came up to me and said, I have an Aunt Plutie. And I said, I've never heard of that before. I'm so sorry for you. No, I'm just kidding. You know, Aunt Plutie, Uncle Rufus, whatever. You know, you say, well, I'm not as bad as them. You know, the Bible says that we're not supposed to compare ourselves amongst ourselves. We're supposed to compare ourselves to Christ. But we are living in a day when there's wickedness, really bad stuff is abounding. So what happens is, as a Christian sees all that darkness out there and says to themselves, well, at least I'm not that. Well, I would hope so. You know, if you've been saved 6 months, it's high time that the cussing stops. Amen. Stop cussing, man. I realize, you know, it may take a while for you to not slip every now and then, but things, you know, the things I used to do, I don't do them anymore. The things I used to do, I don't do them anymore. The things I used to do, I don't do them anymore. There's been a great change since I've been born again. Remember, we used to sing, the girls I used to date, I don't date them anymore. The Fords I used to drive, I was kidding. I've always was a Chevy guy, and one guy came up to me because I was kidding him about the Fords and everything. My dad likes Fords. My dad's father, my grandpa, can you imagine? How could anybody hang this around a guy's neck? My grandfather's name was Ford Nichols. Now, that poor fella, I don't know how he lived his whole life. Guy came up to me and he said, you know, what do they always talk about all the bad stuff that happens in the back seat? It's a Chevy. I'm like, okay, well, let's go for Fords now. God's driving Fords, amen. But boy, do we justify things. Constantly, well, you know, I'm not as bad as that fella. I'm not as bad as that fella. See, it's always, as long as you're not looking at Jesus, it's always easy to find someone that you envision yourself as better than. You can always do that. But see, what we're supposed to do is strive to be like Christ. Back in Proverbs, if you go through those verses and you meditate upon them, you'll grasp God really wants to bless you. He really wants you to have a happy marriage and a happy home. He really wants you to have a joyful life. It's not God's will for you to go through life looking like you just sucked on sour persimmons juice. You know, I was in really bad pain one week. I'd been in a wheelchair for a while, and I was going through therapy, and I was finally learning how to walk. And I had 2 canes, and I was walking into church real slow, you know, and just in pain. And one of the guys in our church, his name is Bernie Rowe. He's one of our bus drivers, and he's driven the bus every Sunday, Pastor Skeving, for 24 years and never missed a Sunday. This following January, it'll be 25 years for him. That's what he's been aiming for. He's had that goal. So he just came in with his bus, and he parked the bus, and he's walking into Sunday school, and he sees me walking into church. And he said, "Hey, preacher, how you doing?" And 9 times out of 10, I always say, "Great." And I said, "Great." And he said, "You ought to inform your face about it." You got to understand, Bernie and I are, you know, we're buds, and I started laughing. It cracked me up. I said, "It was that bad, huh?" And he said, "It was worse than that." You know, God doesn't want us to walk through life just this, you know, chin on the ground. Why is your chin on the ground? It's probably because your whole life is a pattern of widening the plate. You say, "Well, Pastor, you know, I'm trying to do things right, and it's hard." No one said it would be easy. By the way, it's not just your own life. It's then those that are accountable to you. You know, I imagine, Brother Venom, where are you at? Right there. Man, you give out the demerits, right? You don't give out the demerits? Oh, I thought that was you. Because I was going to say, if you're the guy that gives out demerits, that's the greatest name for a guy in a Bible college giving out demerits that I've ever heard, you know? Here's a little venom from me, you know? Yeah. You know, but you know, I'm sure that Brother Venom, they're working in the college, and all you different men that work in the college, Brother Wilson and others, you know, guess what? We have a responsibility. My father used to spank me. You know, you ever heard that old line, you know, "This hurts me more than it hurts you." You know, I always felt like, well, Dad, you know, hey, I don't want to cause you any pain. It's not, you know, I don't want to hurt you, Dad, you know. But what was the parent saying? What was my father? My father would talk to me and say, "Son, I don't enjoy spankings." My dad would sometimes, he'd say to me, "Do you like spankings?" And I'd say, "No, I don't." He'd say, "Well, why don't we stop having them?" "Yeah, that's great." And he'd say to me, he said this many times, he said, well, you're in charge of this. And many times he would open the Bible and he would say, "Son, listen, you disobeyed me. Would you like me to now disobey God since you disobeyed me? Is that what you'd like me to do?" And I never could come up with, "Yeah, Dad, I'd really like you to disobey God." I've joked for years, you know, that verse in the Bible, "Beat him with the rod, he shall not die." That was my father's life verse. He was trying to test God to see if the scripture was true or not, you know. But I'm very thankful that my father had this sense of responsibility that he couldn't just look the other way and say, "Well, you know, my son's a good kid and he didn't mean to, and you know, I'm sure that this won't become a pattern." My father didn't live that way. My father knew that his responsibility was to hold me accountable. If you're in a position of authority, don't let it go to your head, and don't think that there can't ever be grace, and all that. Don't misunderstand me. But we have to stop widening the plate. We have to stop thinking that we can justify what's wrong. So you say, Pastor, what are you trying to say? Well, think about it. What's in your life right now that you have widened the plate for? You say, well, well, let me help you. What do you watch on your television? Is there anything that you watch on your television that you've widened the plate on? If I brought in some rock music and I handed it to Brother Joe and said, hey, just, right when I stand up to come to the pulpit, this is my intro music. I'd like you to just play this group, AC/DC. If you could just play this on my way up here, I think that would just give it a pop. Would you go, absolutely not. That's horrible. Now, how come you watch cop shows with that music blasting in your house? Somebody walks by out in front of your house, here's your TV. You don't know who lives there. I mean, really? You'd be shocked. Just go in the other room while your family's watching TV, and your mind will say, hey, what are you watching out there? What are you listening to? They're not listening to it. The devil has got one gateway of their mind with their eyes watching something that maybe isn't all that bad. Maybe a police officer's chasing somebody. But another gateway to their mind is their ear, and he's blasting into their memory stuff that widens the plate that just shouldn't get in there. You with me? It's bad enough that we have to go. We live in this world and we're supposed to reach it. We had to shut ourselves off from the world. And we go into places and all that stuff's going on. But in our homes? Now you take it the rest of the way, because I don't have time to make you feel any more uncomfortable. I tell people, I want you to like me, so I'm not going to get too in detail. But there's this fella named the Holy Spirit, and he can look inside your heart right now, and there's stuff in your life where you've widened the plate. I'm going to tell you something. You're not going to get the joy of the Lord by widening the plate. It's got to stay 17 inches. I am God. The Bible tells us that He changes not. Jesus Christ the same yesterday, today, and forever. He doesn't all of a sudden one day, because your kid did it, He doesn't switch it to 18 inches. It stays 17 inches. And remember what the old coach said? He said, hey, what do we do with a player that can't throw that ball across 17 inches? Remember what he said? He said, we send them to Pocatello, Idaho. With me in my life, it was my father saying, son, go to my room. When my dad did two things, you knew that it wasn't going to be a good time. If you heard him say, go to my room, that was a bad deal. If you looked across the room at him, there were other adults there, or, he wasn't, just going to make a big deal. If my father bit his lip right here when he was looking at you, if he went, he was silently saying, go to my room. He just never changed the size of the plate. I'm so thankful for that, because through that, He introduced me to a God that never widens the plate. Just a simple truth. I pray that it'll be driven down into your heart. And I pray you'll never forget the old coach. And don't widen the plate. The path to God's blessing is through the door of obedience. The path to God's chastisement is through the door of disobedience. I pray you want God's blessing and walk through that door of obedience.